Okay guys, who said that hunters can't have strong fun builds to use in Destiny 2? Sure, Titans won with the builds last season with the Edge of Fate, but today we're taking a classic hunter build that used to be one of the best builds a while back and recreating it to make it work differently with a new gameplay loop. Basically before, you would have that classic gameplay loop where you would dodge near an enemy, then you'd go and melee them to go invisible and repeat the process to stack up combination blow for melee DPS. Like sure, that was fun and strong, but it was kinda slow at the same time. In today's meta, you want fast paced builds to keep up with the ad density. So this time we have a twist with the build. Instead of doing that, we're instead triggering a loop that doesn't require us to melee or dodge at all, but at the same time allows you to still use the new Praxic Blade sword, or any sword for that matter, because by just killing enemies with the sword, you're going to go invisible and weaken them as well. So similar to my Titan and Warlock build, we're going to get infinite Devour for health on kills and infinite grenades. We're getting infinite ammo for our swords to maintain the loop and tank loads of damage, but also get Overshields at the same time, weaken enemies and increase our DPS and just literally obliterate everything. But the best part isn't any of that, it's the fact that you can use any Prismatic build of your choice. You want faster tethers with Orpheus Rig? You can do that. You want to use a golden gun? Go for it. The only things that are required for this build to work are Stylish Executioner, one of the artifact perks, and a sword. With this build though, we will be going with the Void Tether and an Orpheus Rig, but I will leave my suggestions along the way as we go through the build breakdown shortly. So guys, with that said, if you enjoyed this one, then as always a rating is much appreciated, and now let's get right into it. Roll the intro. Okay, now firstly I want to go over how this build works within Renegades. So before you would start the loop by dodging near an enemy to slow them, and then punch them, which would make you invisible, and then you would just loop this over and over, which builds up the combination blow for stronger melee attacks. You can still do that and use things like a Liar's Handshake if you want to, as it won't affect this build at all. But it's too slow of a gameplay loop in today's environment, so what we'll now do instead is try to go invisible by just killing enemies with our sword. So we'll dodge near an enemy to debuff them, and then kill them to go invisible. The issue here is that further kills won't make you invisible on its own, and we won't have that dodge back fast enough either, since we're not using our melee. So to counter this, we'll use the artifact perk here, where while we have a void elemental buff, melee and sword hits weaken targets and final blows create a weakening burst. We'll pair that with power from pain, so rapid final blows against them grants us devour, and also void infestation, so that we send out weakening projectiles. Now with these three artifact perks equipped, what will happen is when you go and get that initial invisibility, you'll have a buff for being invisible and also an overshield. So when you kill more enemies with a sword, that just means that you'll weaken them on hit, that then makes you invisible again once you kill them. But you'll also get Devour too, so you'll have an overshield, invisibility and Devour, all granting you that void buff, which allows you to weaken targets with every sword hit. And that's basically all you need for Stylish Executioner to activate, to then make you invisible and continue the build loop. So that's why this season, we can go invisible all the time while using the sword, and you can do this anyway in any season, but it requires you to use certain weapon perks that not all weapons have, and it's also not as consistent. The main thing that's happening is you just need to kill a debuffed target to go invisible, and once you're invisible you can continue the loop as long as you're killing debuffed enemies. This works great with void weapons paired with Falcons, but it restricts you to having to use void weapons and the exotic armor, which is not what we want, so we have more freedom and flexibility this way by having the artifact perk, which makes this build a solid choice this season, since we can pair it with the new Praxic Blade sword and still get strong buffs to keep us alive and add clear like a boss. The weapon we're using with this build is the new Praxic Blade sword. Make sure that you are using the defensive form so that we can generate special ammo on blocks, and I'm also using this refraction core so that we can weaken targets by reflecting damage and makes us invisible too. You can get the sword from the Fire and Ice exotic mission, which you'll get anyway just by doing the campaign. I do recommend that specific core though, because by blocking attacks, you'll just go invisible when enemies kill themselves, so it is pretty good since you can recharge and repeat whilst you're invisible from that, so you're literally in god mode constantly due to this. Whereas if you use the impact core, it doesn't really matter much, and it is a waste due to it giving off the exact same effect as the artifact perk. When we don't have those artifact perks, and you still want to use this build, then that option would be better. Now how this build works is you'll start by debuffing an enemy by dodging near them or blocking attacks and killing them to go invisible. Then you'll just go around killing enemies with your sword to continue the gameplay loop of going invisible and debuffing every enemy whilst getting buffs like Devour and stuff. You will be able to use the build of your choice, so if you want to use an Orpheus Rig with the Tether for faster supers then you can, or you can go Celestial with Golden Gun, or just use anything of your choice. If you're using the tether with Orpheus, you would just tether a group of them, then just run in and kill them with the sword and block damage if you need to resist the hard hitting adds. When you do have a lot of tough adds around you, you will almost all the time get that super back stupidly fast or instantly, and that's not including things like using Renegades abilities or modifiers that help you that you would be using throughout this season anyway, as you grind that content with this build. So it is great to catch up with the warlocks who have just melted everything with arc swords. It does resist a lot of damage against chickens and other hard hitting enemies. You're almost invincible, but we're not a stronghold titan, so we can't block permanently. So you do need to be careful and recharge occasionally by not blocking all the time. But since we're going invisible a lot, that allows us to stop for a second and recharge. In a live environment, the way you would use this build is exactly the same, just debuff enemies and kill them to go invisible. It works great with teammates who are debuffing enemies like warlocks with stasis turrets, since you can benefit from that debuff to go invisible as well. The amount of times you can go invisible with this build is insane. Like, you can probably do an entire mission and be invisible for like 90% of it whilst you're fighting enemies. Now for the subclass, we are going to be using the Prismatic Hunter with the Shadowshot Deadfall super, and the abilities we'll use are Gambler's Dodge to refund the melee, which does require, I believe, 70 stats in the class, then a Combination Blow to refund the class ability, which again I believe requires 70 in the melee stat, and with this we'll use a Grapple Grenade, but you can change this to anything you want. For aspects, you want Stylish Executioner, so that defeating a target affected by any elemental debuff grants invisibility, and while invisible, your melee attack weakens targets. With this we have Winter Shroud, so that dodging slows nearby targets. That's how we'll start the loop, although there are other ways to trigger the loop, so you don't have to use this, but it's what I recommend for it to be consistent. As for fragments, you want Facet of Purpose, so picking up an Orb of Power grants an Overshield based on your Void super. If you're not using the tether, then it will just give you whatever you're using, so if it's a golden gun, then you're going to get restoration. But the second fragment is Facet of Courage, so our arc melee does more damage to enemies. That is if you're using the melee part of the build. Like, say for example, on the unlikely chance that you somehow run out of ammo, or you start with no ammo, then using the melee side of the build at the start is fine, so that would help with that. Otherwise we have Facet of Dawn, so powered melee hits make us radiant, so I recommend hitting enemies with your melee every now and again, just so that you can get the radiant buff for the extra damage to the sword. Lastly though, we have Facet of Protection, so that we gain more damage resistance when surrounded by enemies, which we'll have all the time since we are a melee sword close combat build. And for the stats, I recommend going a balanced approach with 100 in the melee, 100 in the super, 100 in the class, and then the rest in weapons. I wouldn't go over 100 in any of them, other than the weapon stat or the super stat, if you are using a super that damages enemies, since it would just be a waste. But the exotic armor we're using with the tether is the Orpheus Rig, so that we gain energy back when using it on a group of enemies and killing them. This just provides us with more consistent supers. There are alternatives to use like Graviton if you want to improve the invisibility duration, or Liar's Handshake if you want to improve the melee's damage. All the choices are up to you, as it won't impact the core design of the build. For artifact perks, you want these 3 main perks, which will do all the heavy lifting for you, but the other perks you want are the Combination Argent Blade for more sword damage, Sword Storm combo to improve the sword more, Elemental Siphon to create elemental pickups with the sword, Expert Handling for more guard resistance, and this one here for more ammo generation with the sword. Lastly, for the mods, you want any mods that would grant as much kinetic special ammo as possible, and also Orbs of Power as well. So overall, this is probably one of my favourite builds to use on the Hunter at the moment in Destiny 2 Renegades Season 28 or Season Lawless. It's probably not the best build overall, but it is a great build for survivability and a far better improvement than the classic melee build we had before, so definitely one I recommend you get set up. But if this isn't the build for you, then be sure to check out the playlist down below or look at my other builds over on my Mobilytics page. Otherwise, have a good one, and I'll see you all soon for the next video. Peace out, guys.